And joining me now from St. Louis, author and radio host Kevin Jackson. He's also a Fox News contributor. All right, Kevin, welcome back. You were on last night. You started talking about some numbers. And I think it's clear that more than 90% of African Americans who are killed by other African Americans. But what I think is even, worth discussing even more is the percentage of African Americans who are killed by cops as compared to the number of whites who were killed by cops. What can you tell us?
Well, we talked about it yesterday that whites are killed. Currently, I believe it's now 562. The other day it was 561. But of the people who've been killed by cops this year thus far, 275 of them are white, and 136 are black. Now, the challenge you had back was that whites outnumber blacks 3-1, and that's a fact. But what it doesn't take into account is the level of crime in the black community, which is pretty substantial. So when you throw that in,
go ahead, Kevin.
When you throw in those numbers, and I'm a mathematician, so trust me on this, blacks are actually underrepresented in law enforcement in terms of what Obama was talking about, traffic stops, detained by police, and so on and so forth. So it's a misnomer for people to say that more blacks are not being killed than whites, first of all, and per capita as it relates to the amount of crime in the black communities, unfortunately, blacks are actually detained less, and it's substantially less. So the only reason why I bring it up, because of course there are black people out there right now mad at me, but the reason why I bring it up is because if we're going to have a talk about this realistically, we've got to bring in everything and not have some false narrative that blacks are being targeted
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying when you say blacks are underrepresented, what you're saying is blacks are not targeted as often as the claim is by everyone from the White House to Black Lives Matter. That in fact,
that is correct.
Because police are called into high crime areas more than they are in other areas, in fact, their lives are in more danger. Is that correct?
The truth be told, a white person is actually more likely to be shot and killed by a cop in relationship to the amount of crime in the white community. Now, when you say that, people immediately go, oh, you're an Uncle Tom, Kevin, or Step and Fetch It, or whatever. Those are the facts. And so if we're going to have an honest discussion, we have to be presenting the facts. It doesn't mitigate when a black person or any other person, for that matter, is shot wrongly. But we're not going to have a right discussion about it until we do that. And the problem with the left, Judge, is they never want to have this discussion. They play it off. One of the stats I gave you last night was 6,000 blacks were killed last year in the United States. Less than 200 were killed by police officers. So if 93% of blacks are being killed by other blacks, that's a pretty substantial number of blacks killing people in the United States.
All right. And one of the things that is now starting to get attention is the resisting arrest. The argument that if some people just listen to the command of a police officer, there wouldn't be this problem. And, there's a recent article that talks about the fact that African Americans are cited for resisting arrest at a higher rate, at the very least, in San Francisco. But what does that tell you in terms of the shootings?
Well, in terms of San Francisco, so blacks resist arrest 8 times more than whites. And what happens is when you resist, for example, a cop rolls up on you and he's told that you have a gun, as was the case in the case of Sterling. And Sterling resisted arrest. Now, everybody looks at the video after the fact and says, look at what the cops did. But these cops rolled up on a scene, put themselves in harm's way, went towards what potentially could be gunfire in order to disarm this man because somebody there was being menaced by Sterling with his weapon. And so the idea that you're going to blame the cops for saying, hey, we need to de-escalate this situation so we get to go home to our families is ridiculous. We're looking at the outcome. We're not looking at anything that led up to this. The same thing is true of Castillo. We hear that he was pulled over because of a broken taillight. He was pulled over because he fit the description for be on the lookout of somebody who had done an armed robbery.
So what you've got police who are on edge because they know that they could be confronted by a gun, or they've got someone for whom warrants might be outstanding, and so that kind of adds to the level of intensity in terms of the police response. And finally, I'm going to ask you, Kevin, how dangerous is it for police out there?
It's unbelievably dangerous. And, people, again, I get called all kinds of names, and they say to me, Kevin, why are you doing this to the black community? And I say, guys, look, I'm a black man. Right. Every time a cop rolls up on me, I'm a nice guy. But I have to go through the same routines and everything as if I'm a hardened criminal. This is not what we need to leave behind for a generation of young black men to be fearful because of what these thugs are doing. Well, and the people that shot these guys, and you let off the program correctly, nobody's talking about this as a hate crime. They're talking about it as if it's no big deal. This is a big deal because cops are not going to roll up on young black men and have the same feeling that they have when they roll up on other people, and that is pathetic.
All right, Kevin Jackson, thanks for being with us tonight. And joining me now, former D.C.